Yo, this is it. I'm Mr. Fate, and you're listening to Attack of the Beats on IllMuzik.com. Once again, another 5 beats, another 5 reviews, and I've been listening to a lot of beats the past few days here because we just had the Battle That competition, our yearly beat battle. It's the best competition ever. Every year, it's the biggest and baddest. And actually, this year was really, really good because we had a lot of people entering, and for the 16 that were chosen, what's interesting too is that the 16 that were chosen, they all uploaded 4 beats each, and which is great because sometimes people like for example with the Warzone, some people upload just 1 or 2 beats. A lot of times just 1, and that's okay, whatever. But I prefer it when it's 4 beats. A new beat each round. It just gives it a nice variation, if you will. So, but anyway, I was really glad to see that. And in the end, it was Sucio, Mr. LOG, Buster Ass Chick Mark, who took it all. And it was really close between him and Bugsy. Man, that shit was close. It really was. And I'll get into it later in the forums. Start posting some other stuff. I'm going to post actually the beats of all the people who didn't get accepted. Those were all dope beats too. So I'm going to put those up. So be on the lookout for that. But let's get to it right away with the Attack of the Beats. First up, we've got Beat SN with Circus Instrumental. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was Beat SN with Circus Instrumental. All right, so for this one, I've heard this type of beat, many times where it's a good beat. I like it. It's just you need better synths. That's it. Just a better sounding synth. And I don't know what you're using, but in this case, honestly, I would just keep everything as is and just change it out. Just swap out your synth or whatever, because right at the beginning I hear that main synth, okay, and I'm thinking to myself, now imagine that same pattern and everything, but instead of that synth you have, let's say, like a nice piano from a VST, a nice VST piano plugin. Let's say you did that. I mean, right away that would be totally different. It'd be a totally different beat. Because first of all, I'm not saying you should use piano, but I'm just saying is that in that case, yeah, it would just sound like it would just be this beautiful sounding track right there. Just that instead of the synth. So in your case, yeah, I mean, really, you just need to swap this shit out. That's it. The drum track, I like the drums. It's dope. It's a good pattern. The kick and the snare, they're both thick and punchy. Although the snare, you know what, keep it, but add another snare on top of it. Just layer another snare, something that's thinner, that smacks a little more, but still keep this snare because it blends in well with that kick. So it's really good. So the drum track, that's no problem. You just got to add a little bit of a snare to it to give it some variation. But as far as the synths, really, I mean, even the other little small synth you have that comes in here and there, it sounds, well, it's not a flute, but it kind of sounds like that. It's just a little synth or whatever, but just that alone, let's say that was, a sample of a trumpet, let's say, I mean, that would be totally different then, because that's the thing with a lot of people, I think, is that, whether you're sampling or using VSTs or whatever, is that, you've got the production down, you've got the pattern down, the whole concept, everything is good. It's just the sounds aren't good. That's the whole thing. So really, I mean, just look around, check the forums. There was even an article I posted a long time ago with all these free sounding VSTs. I'm not saying they all sound great or whatever, but they sound pretty good and stuff. And look around. There's some cheap ones out there. You can get some that are on sale too, and get some. Check out the demos, check them out and stuff. But really, that's all you got to do. Just swap it out and change up that snare on the drum track. But other than that, I like the way it's all put together. It's some dope shit. So next up, we got Glut with From the Shadow. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was Glut with From the Shadow. All right, so this is an interesting track because I really like that low end. That's some dope shit. Okay, it's eerie. You got this nice bass, this eerie music in the background and all that stuff. The problem I have really is only the drums, because I'm listening to the drums and they sound nice. It's just that they sound like they're recorded in a very small room. So the type of drums you used, it's just like you know because of that you have this eerie low end background music, and then just these dry small room drums just kind of sitting on top of it. It doesn't blend in with the music, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of sitting there, even though it sounds good together. Like, I mean the drums sound good together. They don't blend too well and stuff, so sometimes, like, yeah, you could try to fix that shit. I mean, sometimes you can EQ it. EQ becomes your best friend in a situation like this. Right away, I think a lot of people will probably just go for compression, stuff like that, but really EQ, EQ stuff. if you check out your DAW, man, I mean, most of the DAWs today, man, I mean, they have some really nice stuff, like I use Sonar, and they have this master channel EQ stuff, and I'm telling you, man, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with that. It makes a big difference with that stuff. And, you could do that. Or, there's cases where you just can't really modify it too much, because like in this case, like I said, it sounds like it's recorded in a small room or whatever. So sometimes you just got to swap it out. Sometimes you just got to, get rid of those sounds, like in this case, those drums, and bring in something else and stuff, because that's why, if you keep your music the way it is, and I've got no complaints about the background music, the low end and everything, I got no complaints about that. But drums, let's say you added some muffled drums, like let's say some old dirty breakbeat or something, it's going to sound so much better with this music, right? It's going to sound a million times better. So that's why, a lot of people, they got to be careful when you're putting stuff together, the drum pattern's good and whatnot, but really, I mean, sometimes you got to just sit back and say, wait a second, how does this sound with the music, so, and that's the case with this, so try EQing first. If you can't get something good with the EQ, don't go for compression, really. I mean, you could, but I would just try with the EQ. Really, if you can't get it with the EQ, then just swap them out, change it into something else. But it's some dope music. It's just the drums, man. Drums got to be modified somewhat. All right, so next up we've got Primo with The Deceitfulness of Sin. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was Primo with the Deceitfulness of Sin. All right, so this one, it's kind of the same thing as the previous beat. I mean, you have... hold on a sec. Yeah, sorry. I'm sniffling. I mean, I'm not doing cocaine or anything like that. If anybody's wondering, I'm just like... Yeah. All right. Yeah, hold on a sec. Yeah, all right, so... No, but with this beat, listen, it's kind of the same thing. You have these drums that they're not, it's not like the last one really, but these drums, that's the main thing I noticed right away, is that they're very, very thin. They sound good, like pattern-wise. It's a good pattern. I like what you're doing with the drums. I just think that they're just way too thin to match the rest of the music. Okay, so for the drums, really, in your case, I don't think you really need to... swap them out or whatever. I think you should just EQ it and thicken them up. you can add, just add some low end to the drums and stuff, and you can also add some saturation to it. That'll make it thicker too, and not too much though, and just doing that alone will make it so much better right there, because it is a good drum track. It's just, like I said, it's just very, very thin. It doesn't match the rest. As far as the music though, I was disappointed because it sounds like it's a good sample you've got going. It's just that it needs to be brought out, because it's all just low end in the background and stuff. I wanted to hear. I thought that you were just going to do that in the beginning, so I wanted to hear like the full music of that, not just chilling in the background, like this low end part and stuff. So that's the thing. I was hoping to hear the main part of that sample, right? Like the main, like high end of it, let's say, whatever. So. You just had it too much, with the low pass, you should have just brought it out more and stuff, and the other thing too is, I think besides all that, is the chopping. You have your horns, which sound really good, but there's a couple times with the horn, it's panned right and it just kind of cuts off abruptly. And you can cut off the instrument like that, but you got to add some kind of tail end to it. So you got to add like maybe a slight delay to it, a little bit of reverb on that or whatever, because you did have it trail off when you did the other part of the horns, where it was panning left and right. But you just need to do that in those other instances, where you just have it kind of tail off and stuff, So work on that for the chops, and as far as the main music track. For that too, I mean, like I said, I wanted to hear it come out more, not just the low end part of it, and also, that too, I can hear the choppiness of it and stuff. So just work on the chops a little more, to make sure they don't come out so abruptly and stuff, and it's I don't know what you're using and stuff, but even back in the day, I was using just a regular DAW to just do my chops. I mean, I was adding just a little bit of a slope to cut it off, so you don't hear this clicking, at the end of the sample, or beginning and end of the sample, or whatever. So just do that. You could do that. You could just draw in a slope or whatever. But if you're using something like Machine or whatever, it's got stuff in there for you, for your cutoffs and everything. So just work on that shit, the chops, and like I said, the drums, thicken them up, and the horn, man, make sure it's got some tail end on it. All right, so next up we got RJ Beats with 4 a.m. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was RJ Beats at 4 a.m. All right, so for this one, I really like this music. It's some dope shit. Nice low end, nice synth just chilling in the low end in the background. I like that stuff. You get that little vocal snippet coming in and stuff. That was a nice addition. I like that. That really made a difference, I think. And, The drums, I love the kick. It was nice and thick, but not overwhelming, and that's the problem with a lot of these types of beats, right? Is that, it's especially with, trap and all that stuff, is that it's so heavy, the low end is so heavy and the mix is always super hot and stuff. So in your case, it wasn't like that, because, even like this past week, I heard some beats, man, where it was just like the meters were off the charts, I'm like, come on, man, like you got to mix it so that it's not just bleeding like crazy, so in your case, no, it was nice. It mixed well and stuff. The only issue I have really is the snare, because the type of snare it is, it's panned dead center, and it sounds like it's up front, like I got headphones on, so it sounds like it's up towards my temple, and it's just like, I don't know, it just sounds like it's really up front, and kind of like a surround sound, but whereas it's panned dead center and it's up at the front, you know what I mean, instead of like just in the middle, just sitting there and stuff. So because it's that kind of snare, you could either change it out, or if you want to keep it, that's fine, because it's a nice sounding snare. I just don't like the way it sounds where it's positioned, so if you keep it, you know what, honestly, you should have, because there's a lot of snare hits, then you should have another snare that's in stereo, and maybe every couple of bars, you just have this snare that just drops in on top of that, or to replace that snare, and just to kind of fill out that space and stuff, because if you were to get rid of the snare though and put something else in, I would say put a stereo sounding snare in, something that's left and right, and that'll really fill it up, because the rest of the music, it's dark, it's eerie, it's sort of lo-fi, so you could get away with adding this nice bright snare that's really going to fill out the space. So that's about it, really. I mean, just the snare, because everything else sounds really, really good. I really like the track. Just that snare, man, it just bothered me. I don't know. Do something with that. All right, so next up I got it right this time, 76 with IllMuzik. Let's check it out. All right. Okay, so that was 76 with IllMuzik. I guess that's how you pronounce it. All right, so listen, I mean, I've heard this sample a bunch of times, and, most of the time people just take that sample and they just loop it as is, okay, and just call it a day. They just put some drums on it and that's it. You flip the sample, I mean, you looped it, but you added your own spin on it, and that's what's important, because as soon as I heard the horns come in, I was like, oh, okay, here we go, because it adds some variations to it. Right away, you got these horns. It's not just this sample looped over and over and stuff. So I really like the horns. You're playing with the horns here and there, and they're floating around in the audio space, so that's really good. And the drums, that's what really stood out for me, was the drums, because they just sound nice. The kick is nice, the snare is nice, percussion, that's a nice addition. So very good job on the drums and all that stuff. My only complaint really is the low end, because it sounds like an 808 that you have or whatever, an 808 kick or something. And you just got to be careful with that, because it is pretty heavy. It sounds like something that's pretty heavy in the mix. It could be toned down just a bit. It's a nice sound, like it blends in with everything else. I just think that you just need to just lower it in the mix a little more and all that stuff. Maybe EQ it a bit, but that's about it. But I like the way you flip the sample. It's really, really nice. And there's not too much else to say, really. It's just that low end and stuff, and it's interesting, listening to that, because you hear, like I was saying, you hear a lot of people who take a sample like this, for example, and they just loop it over and over and stuff. And especially back in the day, in the golden age of hip hop, where a lot of the same samples were being used and stuff, and it's just it's the same sample, right? So I mean, sometimes you listen to a track back then, you're like, is this so-and-so? No, it's this other guy, or whatever. And it's like, okay, but it's the same sample. So they just flipped it a little differently and stuff, So that's why, if my advice to people when you're using a popular sample, something like this, is you got to put your own spin on it and stuff. You can't just use it as is, because it's been used a million times already and stuff. So, but anyway, so good job with the horns and the drums, but just watch that low end. That's some pretty heavy shit. But that's it. So, actually, that's it for the show. All right, so that's it for me. I'm Mr. Fade. This is Attack of the Beats. Keep sending the beats in. I'll keep reviewing them. And my favorite beat this week. Actually, I shouldn't say this week, because sometimes I do it twice a week. So my favorite beat this time. My favorite beat. Yeah, my favorite beat. My favorite beat. The winner is, drum roll please, '76 with Hill Sain. Let's check it out.